clothes per litre than the leading fabric softener? It's more concentrated, so use only 1/3 of a cap.
This is KTN News.
So, Wednesday and Saturday will be car-free days in Nairobi, effective February 1st. The Central Business District will be closed to vehicles and traders allowed to sell their wares using the numerous parking lots. Meanwhile, vehicles for the bus rapid transport system will arrive anytime from now. 64 buses from South Africa will be used in the pilot program, and sectoral representatives are concluding negotiations on the acquisition of 11 trains from Spain for use alongside the buses. But question is, how prepared is Kenya and how viable is the project? Were all stakeholders consulted? And is this the solution to decongesting Nairobi CBD? My colleague Sophia Wanuna spoke to the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development, James Macharia. Listen in.
Good evening, Linda. So today the government has announced a plan to introduce car-free days here in the capital Central Business District twice a week. That's Wednesdays and Saturdays. And we want to talk a little bit more about this plan, what it aimed at, what it means, but also the concerns that we've already seen people raising around this kind of a proposal. And joining me for that is the man in charge of transport in the country, CS. That's James Macharia. Thank you so much for making time for us. Let's begin with, for those who may not have heard of that concept, car-free days, what does it mean and why are we introducing it?
Thank you, Sophie. I think it means what it says, car-free days, where we are saying on certain days of the week, we shall not allow vehicles on certain streets of Nairobi. So it will be car-free. And therefore, we shall be blocking certain roads 2 days in a week, on Wednesdays and Saturdays. But before you do so, because we like to do things in a very ordinary manner, we would like to do a pilot. The pilot will be done on the 1st of February, whereby we shall be crossing some of the roads around Kenya Cinema, City Hall, Way, Harambee Avenue, that area where we'd like to do the test. Close the days, the roads from 8 up to 4 o'clock, and see how things go. Because you see, the biggest challenge we have, and you know it, all Kenyans know it right now, is the congestion of the city of Nairobi. You go, people cannot move out of the city. You find cars are stuck in gridlocks and whatever, and so the purpose of this is to see how we can start freeing up the CBD. And this is not a new sort of idea. This has been done elsewhere. You go to Europe, you find some streets which do not allow, actually 7 days a week, they don't allow private vehicles to come there, other than taxis. But in our case, we want to start with freeing up certain roads and see how it goes.
So will there be clearer communications as to exactly which roads, or will the 1st of February, which is this Friday, be a very confusing day for most motorists? Or will there be more clarity so people know specifically these are the roads, and how far do I come with my car? Where do I leave it? Or do I then have to figure myself from wherever I'm coming from, whether it's Thika, Karen, Eastleigh? How more specific details will there be before this starts?
Yes, for the pilot, certainly we shall give very specific announcements in the next couple of days. The good thing is the pilot only covers a very small area. Like I said, if you look at the roads around Nairobi Kenya Cinema, that road, then there's this road, City Hall, then there's this road between Reinsurance Plaza and the High Court, that area, and then Harambee Avenue. So it's not a very big radius, but we see how things go. I think in the past when we had marathons, for example, within the city. We've actually done it before, but only for a few hours. This time we'd like to do it for the entire day, from 8 o'clock to about 4 o'clock.
Are there designated parking slots? Will we say that if you're coming from Isili, if you're coming from Thika Road, or whatever, as this continues, have we prepared for that kind of a situation, or are we saying leave your cars at home or figure out of where you leave your car?
Two things. First of all, the objective is to discourage people using their vehicles. So, yes, if you can leave your vehicle at home, the better. But if you have to come to the city, as I said, the initial phase will not be very challenging because it's a small area. But subsequently, when we start opening up, this initiative to more roads, for example, then yes, there will be some parking areas, designated within the peripheral of the city. But it's more convenient to leave the car at home, because when the program is expanded to the wider CBD, we shall be affecting Moi Avenue, we shall be affecting Haile Selassie Avenue, University Way, Uhuru Highway. So with that, we need to make sure that people know that if you come to Nairobi on these particular dates, then you have a problem because you'd have to park your car very far.
But this is not the government providing the parking. It's to figure out, like for the pilot, for instance, for the roads we're closing around Kenya Cinema, it's the individuals to figure out where they'll park. Just to be clear, there's not going to be a designated spot that the government will say, take your cars here.
You see, it will be self-defeating. If you are to establish car-free days on certain roads, at the same time in the peripherals you provide parking, then you solve nothing. The problem will remain because vehicles will still come to the city of Nairobi. The objective, like I said, is to discourage people from coming to the city. The good thing, we are doing this when we are also enhancing the public transport system. Because, frankly, we cannot continue having so many vehicles, coming to the city. We have 3.4 million vehicles in Kenya, with a population of about 42, 45 million people. You can see the congestion where it's coming from. Yeah. And so with this, it will help people in devising new ways, new options, of new alternatives in terms of how they get to the city. Sometimes maybe people will be sharing the vehicles because you find all these vehicles coming. If you take, for example, the road from Jomo Kenyatta Airport to the city. The other day we counted number of vehicles, 70,000 in one day.
Wow. Okay, so we all agree congestion is a problem in the city. You mentioned this has worked in other parts of the world. True, and it's a noble idea. But let's talk about our specific situation that many critics have argued. Nairobi City is a concrete jungle, quote unquote. It's not built for people, walkways. It's built for vehicles. So that in as far as is there space for people to walk, to cycle? No. So how do we solve that? That yes, we are decongesting, but where will these people walk safely?
That's why if you clear these vehicles we have, and you put small borders where they can buy their things and so forth, first you'll be helping the traders. By this initiative, Sophie, we shall be creating about 10,000 jobs. Previously these hawkers were being chased all over the place, but when we have these car-free days, we shall be allowing now these traders to do genuine business. We are working with stakeholders like banks, like, for example, National Bank. They've come on board, other financial institutions. And the idea is for them to come and say, look, we are providing these borders to these traders who previously they were being chased by city council as carries, and start doing genuine business on the streets of Nairobi on these particular days. That will create order. It will also help us in terms of creating a good environment. All these emissions of carbon dioxide you see in our cities, it will become much cleaner. And this space you are talking about, all of a sudden you're going to find our streets will be very wide.
But still there are no walkways, sir. And there's a big concern about cycling. There are people even now, Boniface Mwangi is one of those who has constantly tweeted about this, that he likes to cycle with his children, but there are no safe cycling lanes. And these are the kind of infrastructure we find in other countries. So is there a plan to create the walkways, but also for those who want to cycle to town? Because that's healthy. It's a beautiful, fresh air. If, there's not the kind of congestion we've been witnessing. Is that in the pipeline?
Oh, yeah, certainly. One of the things we are trying to do is to bring the BRT system. And that BRT system will involve new infrastructure, doing certain dedicated lines, but also those walkways which you are mentioning, where people can walk safely, people can actually cycle, because you go to some countries like, say, the Netherlands, for example, majority of the people, even senior executives, they cycle to work, and becomes a culture. That's something we don't have here. But progressively we are doing it. Today, if you go to the UN side, and you see that these roads which are being done or done near the UN, for example, we have those specific cycling sort of pavements, so nobody goes to the road. And that helps in terms of even reducing accidents on the road.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was a bill, I think it's still one of those being worked on, around banning cycling. Which that undoes what we are trying to do, or the proposal you have, because then those who would want to cycle, if this becomes law, again, what are they to resort to would be the question.
Law is made, or rather, laws are made to serve the people. And so if you introduce a law, it must be for the purpose of making sure the lives of people is better. So as we are doing these new investments, of course, this law can be tweaked to make sure that if there's any banning, it's only where it's necessary. For example, where we don't have these facilities for people to cycle, or the pavements. So that can be aligned with the new investments which are going to put in place. In some places, yes, Nairobi was not planned with those kind of things in mind. Yeah, and for those, yes, we cannot actually say that the people must follow certain rules for which we are not providing any mitigating factors. Yeah. So that's for us to deal with. Okay. Yes.
Border, they in some places have become an issue. Will they be allowed in these car-free days, tuk-tuk, or is it just cycling and walking?
It is just walking. Okay, people. When we say car, it means motor vehicles. Motor vehicles and bicycles, we shall not allow them within those streets. Because at the end of the day, then, it is for the people. We want to create room for the people. People walking and doing their purchases. There will be almost those, if you like, markets along those corridors. Now, if you bring bicycles and all sort of manner of things, motorbikes, bodas, tuk-tuks, it will not work. So it's a matter which we want to test. We want to do it with a pilot. With a pilot, then we can get also people participating to give us their feedback.
How long will the pilot be?
Goes well, maybe a few weeks. If it goes so well, then we shall go to the next stage as quickly as possible. Not just CBD, even Westlands, we want to introduce that as well. In those satellite towns, like Westlands, maybe Upper Hill, we shall be introducing the same concept. Because in Westlands, if you go there, say, this market, you find the same problems. We are fighting in the CBD. So we like to also extend it to other places, these satellite towns.
So are you working as Ministry of Transport alone, or in conjunction, for instance, this pilot with the Nairobi City Council? Because as far as legislation is concerned, for instance, if one day I decide to drive and the cops are trying to stop me and I'm like, what law have I broken? So how are you working to make sure that you're aligning your plans and efforts to not, get into those legal squabbles?
I very appreciate that sentiment, because clearly you cannot succeed in doing things alone in the city of Nairobi. That's why we even introduced the concept of NAMATA, Nairobi Metropolitan Area Transport Authority. And for this particular one, this initiative of car-free days, we are working very closely with the county government. In fact, it is part of what we called Nairobi Regeneration Project. It is not a one-off thing. We just woke up and started blocking roads. It is part of that project, which is geared towards regenerating the city of Nairobi. In fact, as late as this afternoon, I had a quite good discussion with the governor, and we are on the same page. And we are happy that we are working together. Yeah. Yes.
So the governor himself, perhaps even the president, on these car-free days, will expect to see them walking as well, like every other Kenyan, or will there be an exception for the VIPs?
Car-free days.
For everybody.
Car-free days.
Okay.
Yes.
Talk to us now as we wait to see how this plays out. BRT as well, we've had the buses are coming in. This was supposed to be rolled out a while. It has taken quite some time. So what was the hold-up and what is this we're expecting to see in February?
Yes, what we decided to do was to have a real and proper integrated public transport system, where we said we cannot just have buses, because buses picking who and picking passengers from where. So we decided to have an integrated system where we bring the trains, which you bring people from wherever to Nairobi Central Station. And then from there, we do what we call the last mile. And that's where now the BRT takes over. If you combine the commuter rail with the buses, then you have a truly integrated transport system. Because you see, we also need to get people out or vehicles away from our major corridors. To do that, you require to use more trains. So initially, we are bringing about 11 trains, which are coming from Spain, what we call DMUs, diesel multiple units. Very good, very comfortable. And with that, we believe we shall have fewer people coming to the city. The 11 we are initially bringing at full capacity, we shall be bringing about 232,000 people into the city, which is a very big percentage of the people coming to the city. Then we get to the central station, railway station. Then we get now these BRT buses, the 64 initially, which will be a pilot as well, getting people off Haile Selassie, off Moi Avenue. And with that, then we have quite a seamless connectivity. Eventually it's happening, but of course some of these programs take a bit of time because of various challenges.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because one of the concerns even with Thika Road, when we saw one of the lanes, the inner one for that matter, marked out red, some said, has this been thought out in as far as if it's for the BRT, it should be the outer lane, not the inner lane, which ideally is express. So even as you earmark and plan for these other parts of the city, are these some of the thinking going there that will not appear to be counterproductive to what you're seeking to achieve?
Actually, the way that line is positioned is not a mistake or an accident. And it is exactly where it's supposed to be. Because you see the inner lane, you do BRTs for vehicles moving in opposite directions. So the ones going to Thika, the ones coming to Nairobi, must share the common facilities in terms of stations. So you must put then the lines on the inner side, because that's where you can now have both passengers from this other side and this other side sharing the facilities. So it was not actually a mistake or an accident.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. But will we have that kind of marking in the other roads you intend to do around the city for the BRT? Yes,
in fact, I'll give you some pictures to see. Very beautiful, showing how it will be.
Yeah.
The key thing is we have to have discipline, because these special buses, they are not matatus. They are not even high-capacity buses, because, there was that debate that how come we are not buying them locally? We are doing the 64 because they're not here. But we have given local manufacturers and local assemblers opportunity to start doing them here. All these franchises which we have, which are global, like Isuzu, Mercedes, all of them, they'll start doing these buses locally. We have given them specifications, how a BRT looks like, to the minute detail. We shall be bringing one in the next 2 weeks to park it at Uhuru Park, so that people can see what we are bringing.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. We wish you the best. We'll be watching and following and holding you to account on what you've said you intend to do as government. So car-free days, the pilot begins this Friday, which is the 1st of February, targeting Wednesday and Saturdays to be those days that you will not be allowed to drive, even cycle, motorbike, bicycle into the Central Business District. But as we've heard from the CS, it will begin with just a few streets to pilot, and it will depend on how that goes. That will determine then how they unfold to other parts of the CBD. And even we've heard Westlands and, of course, the BRT as well. All this geared at decongesting. Will it all work out, or will we learn lessons to try better another day? We'll wait to see, Linda.
Yeah, will it work out, or will we learn? And the comments, more so on social media. So Edgar Hamlet says, Is it market days or car-free days? Must they bring in hawkers when there are no cars in the CBD? Is the CBD just about cars and hawkers, or open-air businesses so that cars give space for hawkers? And he's not the only one, trust me. The reactions on social media have been crazy about this. So we're talking about BRT. And we're looking at decongesting Nairobi CBD. And I'm having this conversation with Professor Alfred Omenya, who's a scholar, architect, and urban planning expert. We'll also be joined by Kushan Mushiri, who's the chairman, Matatu and Border Operators Federation. And we have Jamal Ibrahim, who's the chair, Association of Matatu Owners. Gentlemen, thank you so much for speaking to us on the big story this evening. Prof, let me begin with you, because you're very keen when the CS was speaking. And he says this is something that we need to do. Of course, there'll be a pilot project. What are your thoughts about this whole planning system? The people on social media are saying the information that's coming out from the ministry and indeed the CS is not convincing.
Thank you, Linda, for having us in the studio. I was quite surprised when the minister talked about car-free days and then suddenly talked about market days. I think historically speaking, we've gone back to the time when Nairobi was a trade center between the Maasais and the Kikuyus before we were colonized. I think it's the two are totally unrelated. If you're decongesting the city, surely you don't decongest the city by bringing in hawkers. That's a very, the two are totally different. One is trade and the other one is transport. But having said that, definitely, I mean, the CBD needs to be decongested. I agree 100% with that idea. But of course, I don't agree with the idea of bringing in hawkers into the CBD. I think hawkers belong to other places rather than the CBD. Having said that, this should actually happen through some sort of coherent planning. It is not just about not bringing the vehicles into the city. It's about providing alternatives in terms of transport. I don't think a lot of people get into the CBD with their vehicles or through all sorts of different means have an option. You don't start, actually by the end state without providing the initial investment that you need, to actually get that functioning. People need to move in the CBD. The basic logistics. You don't expect people to walk from Upper Hill into the CBD. There are sick people in the CBD. There are children in the CBD. There are old people in the CBD. What the minister said and starting to pilot on Friday, and I'm happy to say that on camera, is stupid. There should have been very, very specific planning. And there should have been systematic ways of planning. There's nothing that is being piloted on Friday. We know the sort of chaos that happens when, for example, the races he talks about happens. Is chaotic and people basically keep away. In this particular situation, you want people in the CBD, you want businesses to continue in the CBD, you want life to continue in the CBD, and you're not providing an alternative for people to reach the CBD. And then, of course, after you remove the people from the CBD, what you're going to use that for is an open air informal markets, as it actually were. I am totally disappointed with the minister and all sorts of characters who are working on this. This should have been a systematic plan that is being implemented. It is not a systematic plan. It's a knee-jerk reaction. We expected the minister to focus on the BRT and the planning and the execution of the same, not starting to do all sorts of side shows as it actually were. As a scientist, if you're going to pilot, you don't want to test too many things at the same time. Get your public transport working, get the BRT going, then free the city. It doesn't work the other way around. You don't start by freeing the city and then starting to think how the transport system would work. And Governor Sonko, of course, had a disastrous experiment just a month or so ago. I think the minister also wants to get some brownie points as also one of those foolish politicians trying all sorts of useless things that do not actually make any sense from a rational planning perspective.
Okay. All right. So, Prof, I know you're saying that not a lot of thought has been put into this, and I know you're saying that it doesn't make sense, and I will not use the strong words that I've used on air. This is the national broadcaster. But in terms of planning, Jimal Ibrahim, who's the chair, Association of Matatu Owners, was there in the meeting that was held today. Jimal, how much of planning was put into this, from your understanding?
One thing, thank you, Linda Oguta. And one thing I can say is that about the planning of the city, I think that is the main work of our Honorable Governor, Mike Mbuvi Sonko. I was not even me, I was not expecting that from my CS. So,
been informed about the planning. There must have been someone who came and told you, so this is what we will do, this is what we will do, this is what we'll do, for you to get on board.
I think somebody who was planning that thing, hakuifanya venye natakikana kwa Ministry of Transport, because that hiyo inakuja under docket ya Mike Mbuvi Sonko ya decongest the city na ilikuwa kwa manifesto yake. So the planning was not good, and even if I was in that meeting, I was just floating all that time during the planning. And
so you're floating, and yet you agreed to be part of it.
Sorry?
You're floating, but yet you agreed to be part of it, the team that says, okay, we can do this as a country.
No. One thing I can tell you, Linda Oguta, we were discussing...
It's Ogutu, by the way.
Ogutu, sorry. We were discussing about BRT. We were discussing about how we can decongest the city. But as an apex body, we have never discussed about how to remove the personal vehicles. And I think the day that we discussed about how to decongest the city, we discussed with the former governor of Nairobi, Bwana Igathe, and we said we hike the personal vehicles parking per day to 800 or to 1,000 to frustrate these people for them not to come with the vehicles in the CBD. Coming to hear about that, the CS said that we are doing pilot project to remove personal vehicles from Kenya Cinema, Tomboya, and Haile Selassie. I think it was not unadvisable even to us as business people and as Matatu people. On the other side, one thing I can say is that, Linda, is that most of this time people usually say that Matatu people are the people who bring jam in the city. On the other side, we as Matatu people, we can say that let's just check on what they can do as government so that they cannot put blames on us each and every time that Matatu people are the people who are bringing jam in the city center. So let's just, last month it was Matatu which were being removed from the city. I think this time they are testing if the personal vehicles are the guys who are bringing the jam in the city. And on the other side, one thing I can say about this government of ours, from county government to national government, I think there is poor communication between County of Nairobi and the Ministry of Transport. Because there is no day you can say that our able governor has reduced parking fee to 200 shillings, from 400 shillings to 200 shillings. Again, on the other week, CS is coming out saying that we want to do a free car day on Wednesday and on Saturday. I think there is a lot of miscommunication.
Let me explain free car day to you. Free car day means cars will not be allowed to get into the CBD on Wednesdays and Saturdays. That's what he meant. Kushan, let me bring you to this conversation. What are your thoughts about BRT and the conversation that's surrounding it right now? And how much consultation were there, if at all, between your team and the ministry?
Very much, Linda. I think I'll start by, I don't want to comment, but I'll say this. Judging by what my colleague here, Jamal, has just said, I believe that apex body seems to be having meetings after meetings. Because according to what my brother here said, he was not even aware of what the CS was to say. Maybe there was a meeting after meeting in which they did not involve him. That I would not blame him, because if you look at the leadership of that apex body, it is formed by the likes of Kimutai, Mbogwa, Mukabana. Most of them actually do not even own vehicles, actually. So they would not know the pain of a person that owns a vehicle when and whose family depends on that vehicle when he's told that his only source of livelihood is about to be exterminated. I would like to say that the CS is making decisions based on advice given by the likes of Mukabana, Mbogwa, and David and Mr. Kanoru, and the other one by the name Mwenda.
People who are not here to defend themselves.
No, I need to say this.
No, those people are not here to defend themselves,
okay,
sir.
But most of those people are employees. He's sitting with employees of companies who are there for their own benefit. And now, when you ask people for advice like that, who are not the owners of these businesses, they will give you absurd ideas. As the owners, we are saying there's no way where we were consulted on this thing. And we said emphatically that if you want to reduce the congestion in the city, which is the big thing that is bringing all this BRT issue, decongesting the city, you don't start by buying the trains where you don't have a railway line. You don't buy planes when you don't have an airport. The BRT is a system. And this system needs computerization, offices, the lanes, dedicated lanes. So why are we in such a big rush to bring in buses before we can even do the infrastructure? Now, that brings me to this. Mr. CS, why we've been trying to tell him time and time again, when the demand of any commodity is high, that means the supply is low. In Nairobi, we have a very low supply of parkings. So, Mr. CS, why don't we do the obvious? The thing is that we need to discourage private motorists from coming into the CBD, not banning them.
Okay.
Not banning.
Kushan, listen, I need to ask a question just before I take a break. How come you're not part of the team that was consulted by the CS?
No, we were not consulted.
Why not?
That's what I told you. I told you he's dealing with people who do not own vehicles. These 6 associations that he's talking about, most of them are owned by what we are calling cartels.
Okay, have you tried to reach out?
Chairmen of cattle dips who do not own cows.
Kushan,
so how will they know our pain?
Have you tried to reach out to him?
We've tried.
And?
We've tried a lot. I've even gone to the Apex meeting. My friend Jamel knows that. And most of those cartels were up in arms, saying that we have strangers.
Okay.
Even our madam from Double M, Mary Mwangi, went there. She was called a stranger. Now, these are the kind of obstacles we are facing every time we try to reach the CS Macharia so that we can give him professional advice on this sector.
Kushan, I need to take a break, but we'll be back with this conversation. Thank you for staying with us on The Big Story. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.